After taking a few deep breaths, calming myself down, and regaining full control of my hands, the conversation actually started to flow. It was really, really nice. As we talked, he explained that he enjoys coming to art galleries from time to time, but he doesn't limit himself to just one type of place. Sometimes he visits museums, sometimes it's a poetry lounge, sometimes it's a concert, sometimes it's a play, and sometimes, as he put it, he simply follows wherever his heart decides to take him that day. I have to admit, I liked hearing that. It told me a lot about who he was without him even realizing it. The more he talked, the more I realized he was someone who genuinely appreciated creativity, not just art hanging on walls, but experiences, stories, music, culture, life. He seemed to know every interesting corner of the city, every hidden gallery, every museum exhibit, every concert worth seeing, every play worth attending. And the funny thing is, I spend so much time in galleries and art spaces myself, yet somehow our paths had never crossed before, at least not that I knew of. Maybe our schedules had simply missed each other all this time. Part of me wanted to immediately ask him about the article I'd read. I wanted to ask him about everything, every detail, every question that had been floating around in my head, but I didn't want to overwhelm him with 101 questions 5 minutes into the conversation. So instead, I let him lead. And surprisingly, he did. He asked me more about my work, about storytelling, about art, about Vibe 11.5, about what inspires me. And the more I explained, the more interested he seemed to become. Not politely interested, not pretending to listen, actually interested. Now, ladies, you know how we are. Part of me was trying to figure him out. I was sitting there quietly wondering, is this his thing? Is this some smooth player move? Is this a technique he's perfected over the years? Does he make every woman feel like she's the most fascinating person in the room? Because let's be honest, some people are very good at that. But the longer we talked, the harder it became to believe that. Nothing about him felt rehearsed. Nothing felt calculated. Every question seemed genuine. Every response seemed sincere. It felt like he truly wanted to understand who I was, and that was different. Actually, it was very different. This is going to sound strange, and no, I hadn't had too many drinks, but it felt like he looked at me differently than any man ever had before. Not looked at me, saw me, and there is a difference, a huge difference. It's hard to explain. It's almost like he saw something in me that I wasn't even aware existed. Something beyond what I looked like, something beyond surface level conversation, something deeper. And honestly, I don't even know if I saw that thing in myself. It was one of the strangest feelings I've ever experienced, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was actually kind of beautiful. The evening continued, and before I knew it, we'd shared a couple of drinks and wandered through the gallery together. We stopped in front of several different pieces, talked about what they meant, talked about how different people can look at the same artwork and walk away with completely different emotions. And eventually we found ourselves standing in front of my favorite piece again. Of course he noticed. Apparently I wasn't as subtle as I thought I was. He smiled and asked me what it was about that particular piece that captured my attention every time. And I found myself explaining the colors, the energy, the feeling it gave me, the sense of calm that seemed to wash over me whenever I stood in front of it. I told him how sometimes I would come into the gallery and find myself standing there for several minutes, sometimes even 30 minutes, just staring, just taking it all in. And surprisingly, he found that fascinating. As the evening started winding down, I knew we'd eventually have to go our separate ways. Honestly, I wasn't particularly excited about that part. But then something happened that instantly made my night even better. He asked for my number. Now, truthfully, I probably would have asked for his. But since I'd allowed him to take the lead throughout most of the evening, I figured I'd continue letting him lead the dance. And he asked in the most gentlemanly way possible. He smiled and said, "Maybe I could get your number. Maybe we could talk sometime. Maybe hang out if that's okay with you." Ladies, everything inside of me was screaming, "Are you kidding? Of course that's okay with me." But somehow I managed to keep all of that excitement on the inside. I smiled and calmly replied, "Yeah, that wouldn't be a problem. That actually sounds really nice." Then I added, "Maybe we can get together sometime and see where the vibe takes us." "Find something interesting to do," he smiled. That smile again, the one that kept completely distracting me all evening. And he said, "That sounds pretty cool. I'm liking your vibe." And I have to admit, hearing those words made me smile all the way home.